Hello and welcome back to Marriage Culture TV, where marriage and culture intersect. We're your hosts, Queen Athleen.
And this is Nikhil here. Welcome.
Welcome everyone. So today we are actually going to have a conversation, and
Which we always do.
we always do, and we want you to join in on the conversation in the comment section below.
Yeah.
If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our channel. We're always having good stuff, good conversations, and if you like this video, please hit that like button. So we had a pastor that threw a question out that says, which of these types of marriages are biblically correct? A traditional marriage, the church marriage, where you wear the white gown in the Western world, or the registry/court wedding, which is biblically correct. And so Nikki and I, we were talking about this, and we thought to bring it to this platform, we'd love to hear your feedback, but we're going to give you ours.
Definitely.
So from my perspective, the Bible does not give a guideline as to how to get married. It didn't say after courting for a week, put an engagement ring on the finger. If you like it, put a ring on it. Didn't say all that. And then put on a white dress, walk down the aisle. It didn't say carry a woman over your back to see if you can bear her weight. It didn't give any guidelines, but it did tell you how to live with your spouse in love.
Right.
And according to God's design. So with regard to traditional marriage, there are many, many examples, but I want to give a few, but I'll let Nikki have her say.
I was just getting into having that great conversation with you, but I'll start.
Okay.
One of the things that we did agree on, Queen Athelina and I, is that it is not a physical thing when it comes to marriage. It's definitely a hard thing. And for me personally, it doesn't matter if you are in a church, if it's a traditional, if you're in a court system, as long as you're doing it before God, that's the most important thing. The Bible, like Athleen said, didn't say, okay, you have to get married this way. It did say that you should get married. So that is the most important thing that we're talking about, and if you've been living for a while, you're in the 21st century, you're an adult, you come across many different cultures, and each person has their own way of doing things. As long as it's not against any biblical principle, I do not see the reason why it would be a big deal. Marriage is marriage, whether you're doing it, with some family and some friends, and with someone who is ordained as long. And one of the things I also wanted to say is that if it's legally accepted in the country that you're living in. So let me not even take that out of context before I forget. If you're here in the United States and, hey, they say this is the way that these are the laws or the principles or procedures for a marriage, then this is what we're going to go, we're going to make sure that we do. And it goes for the same thing if you're in China. It goes for the same thing if you're in Egypt. What is the law? What does the law say about marriages? And that's how I look at it. So when we were talking, I know Athleen had some great examples that she wanted us to hear. So I'm going to hand it right back over to her.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk about the South Korea example, like in terms of traditional marriage. It was something that I saw on TV where an American woman went to South Korea to marry her fiance. And so part of their traditional marriage was that she got dressed up in in traditional Korean garb, kind of remind me of a geisha, but it's beautiful. It was a beautiful outfit. And so it was her family. Well, I think one member from her family, and then but his family, aunts and uncles. It was a very intimate setting, and they had their little thing that they did, and she had to carry something to him. And then finally, he had to carry her on his back across the room as a symbol to say, I can take care of you, I got you, I can carry you. And at the end, they were married. In the law of the land, like you mentioned, in the law of the land of South Korea, that is a marriage that is recognized by the country that they're married. They were.
I love that.
Yeah. And you wanted, I don't know, you have any examples?
I wanted to ask you, what about some of the examples of marriages, though, that we see in the Bible? Any take on that?
Yeah, I mean, in the Bible, okay. Let's talk about the first marriage, Adam and Eve. God put Adam to sleep, took a rib out, created a woman. He said, hey, now this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Then there's Hosea and Gomer. She was a prostitute.
Yeah.
He went after her, he married her. God was like,
She was
okay,
right in the house. That's it.
right. And God was like, okay, good. This is your wife and you're going to be her husband. So when she would go back to her prostituting way, God would say, go back and get her. And he
Wow.
did.
Wow.
Now, there's a greater story. Then there's Isaac and Rebecca, where he sent out, was it a family member of one of the people in his camp to
Right.
go to his homeland and to, look for a wife for
Find a
him.
wife. Yeah. So that
Right.
was Abraham sending his servant out and said, hey, I want you to find a wife for Isaac because I
Yes.
don't want Isaac to get married to anyone around here because he was like, I don't like these
Right.
fellas around here for my boy, so go back and get her, and that is one of my favorite love story in the Bible. I just love the whole idea. He sent the servant went out and saw, her and then he brought her home, and it said that when she saw him, she got off the camel, went into his room or his home, and she became his wife just like that.
Yeah. And then there's Ruth and Boaz. What
Beautiful.
did she do? She laid at his feet. Oh no, she uncovered his feet and
Yeah,
laid
and
at the
covered
foot of
herself.
and laid at the foot of the bed. And hey, there you
And he
go.
was like, you know what, I have to make you my wife. And
Yeah,
she became his wife.
she
So
became his
many
wife.
different instances, but each one was so different. And then, I remember I was talking to someone once and they brought up, the story with Jacob, when he ran away and went to Laban. And then when he got there, it was like, hey, he saw the pretty girl,
Yes,
and then the pretty girl had another sister that was not as pretty as the pretty girl.
Leah.
And and he was like, okay, I want to get married to her. And in their tradition, the dad was like, okay, you have to work for X amount of years and do certain things. And then he said they had a big elaborate party, got him all drunk. He went in and didn't know that he was actually laying with a sister that wasn't so pretty. The not the prettiest, not the prettier of the two.
Yeah,
And that was still considered a marriage. But
yeah,
like I was telling someone, and I was even talking to the pastor who had thrown the question out, that was not, Laban was not even a Christian. That was
right,
a pagan
right.
definition of what marriage was. But because the Jacob did it, and he was a Christian, that was a wedding for him. So there's so many instances of marriages, and sometimes people are like, well, you only did this part, you have to do this part,
Yes,
and if you didn't do this one, then we can't do this one, and it's not complete until you do A, and then you do B, and then you do C. As long as a person has come before God and man and said, this is my husband and this is my wife, then
and I heard someone say, and I disagree with it, that if you haven't paid the dowry and you're living with that woman as man and wife and you've done everything else, but if you haven't paid the dowry, that's not your wife. I don't believe I agree with that.
definitely not. That's
That's just
another
man.
tradition. That's
That's
another
Yeah,
tradition.
that's just another tradition.
Yeah.
That's just man's tradition. And I also heard, this was quite a few years ago, where someone said, if you can't marry, you have to marry within the church. And I guess that'll segue us into the church topic.
Right.
You
Right.
have to get married within a church. Like if you can't get married in a hall, it's not a marriage. Or you can't get married like in a garden, because it came about because I've always said, oh, I've always wanted a garden wedding or a wedding by the seaside. Being the island girl that I am, I love gardens and I love the sea. So I wanted an outdoor, intimate, small, 50 people garden wedding. That's what I want. Now, that's not what I had because I was in a church where the
Right.
tradition was you
You
had
have
to
to
do.
come into the church and get married, and that's one of the that's a big thing in Christendom, where it's
Yeah,
like, especially if you're coming from another culture. And I think in most of those cultures, and I might be saying this, and I know maybe I might get some backlash for it, but if you're coming from a culture where there was other rituals being performed or people served other
rituals.
gods,
That's the
right,
word.
apart from God, so when they come to the full realization of who God is, they kind of bring those things into it. Hey, we're not going to accept this. You have to come before us. We have to put you two together, or we're not going to consider it a marriage. Like you were saying, getting married in the garden, beautiful thing. Why wouldn't it be honored before God?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't it be honored before
yeah.
God? And one of the things we were talking about, and I know we're going into it and we're going to end in a little bit. We're Jamaicans. In Jamaica, see, you know, dude see you and you like each other. You talk to mom, you talk to pop, and hey, the family gets to meet. We have our engagement, and then after that, we have a wedding, and that's it. So, you know, some of these cultural things was kind of new to us, so we had to like do a little bit of research, you know. But
And speaking of churches, there's some churches that say if you don't do 6 months of counseling, you can't get married, or they won't marry
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And or here's this one: if you've been married before, hey, Oluwa Jesu, I went there. You can't. I mean, come on, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so these are traditions of
tradition.
men, but
Yeah,
the Bible says in Proverbs 19:14 that a prudent wife is from the Lord. You
yes,
know, and the Bible says marriage is honorable on in all,
yeah,
and the bed undefiled. Can the two walk unless they agree? That word agreeable has a connotation of being compatible. So it's about compatibility. And like Nikki says, you going before God and says, "This is my husband." If you want to exchange rubber bands, some people nowadays they're doing tattoos or whatnot. You can't say, "Oh, because you exchange rubber bands, you're not married."
you're not
It's what
married or
what is the
anything
law of the
like that.
land? In the eyes of God, you be married, but you also want to follow whatever the law of the land is.
Definitely,
In
definitely.
America, you need
You
that
know,
paper, you know, which then takes us to the registry or the court marriage.
yeah. And one of the things I want to point out before Athleen takes us in so we can go is um we're Christians. We do believe in a marriage between a male and a female, definitely.
Yes.
Second thing, um, you know, you have so many different laws being passed now in regards to marriages. We're still going to stand by that whenever we're talking about marriages and intercultural marriages, you know. Um, it's a beautiful thing, and sometimes I think we let tradition and what other people think or where we grew up or you know that's the opinion of
Mm-hmm.
others just take away from what God wanted in the first place, you
Yes.
know. But I think whether you get married in a church, you get married on the beach, you get married in the at the garden, in the garden, whether it's on a ship, it could be in a
Exactly.
plane, as long as it's before God and man, and you say, hey, and it's honored in your country that you're in, then hey, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. With regard to the court weddings now, the registry wedding, again, it's just, inviting God. God, this is my husband. This is or my husband or your husband say this is my wife. This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. God's like, go ahead, boo. You got the green light.
That's
Then
it.
do what the law of the land says. I remember I went to the courts initially. My father was not having that. He was actually quite angry. My dad was like, if a pastor, and I respect that. If a pastor doesn't marry you, he pastor has to bless you. And I was like, Daddy, yeah, we're gonna do that. He's just like, because who's the judge? Who's the court appointed person that's married? What are they about? What's their lifestyle? What are their belief processes? These are not people that can join you together. And I understood where he was coming from that, traditional mindset. But with God, it's like if we involve God, to us we were married and
And that's
divorced.
all it takes. That's
We were
all it
married,
takes. That's all
and
it takes.
we've
So
had a gotten married. What about you, Nick?
I'm totally in agreement with that. As long as God is in the picture and you haven't involved him.
Mm-hmm.
Laban was not a Christian. His kinsmen were not Christians, but they got married, and it was, God. It said that, hey, he was married. At the end of the day, Jacob was married to Leah, and then Jacob was married to Rachel. And I know, judging from what we're saying, I know you might have a lot of comments, a lot of questions that you might want to ask. Hey, please feel free to come on our page, Marriage Culture TV, and drop a question, comments. We're waiting to hear back from you. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is the best time to subscribe. Share with a friend, a neighbor, co-worker. Let them know that, hey, Marriage Culture is here, Marriage Culture TV is here, and we're here to stay. Again, this is Nikki O.
And I'm Queen Athleen.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.